Did you know that the earliest historical period in Japan was named after their early type of pottery? Hello and welcome to World History Encyclopedia. My name is Kelly and today's video is all about the history and development of ancient Japan. Stick around to learn all about the different periods of ancient Japanese history, the oldest pottery in the world, the Shinto religion, and the development of Japan up until the medieval period. Don't forget, the easiest way to support us is by giving this video a thumbs up, subscribing to our channel, and hitting that bell icon for notifications so you don't miss out on any new uploads. World History Encyclopedia is a non-profit organisation and you can find us on Patreon, a brilliant site where you can support our work and receive exclusive benefits in return. Your support helps us create videos twice a week, so make sure to check it out via the pop-up in the top corner of the screen or via the Patreon link down below. The Jōmon period was the first historical period of Japan and dates between circa 14,500 and 300 BCE, although those dates are still disputed. The name for the period, Jōmon, comes from the name of the pottery that was crafted during this period, which also just happens to be the oldest vessels in the world, which were decorated with a simple rope-like decoration or jōmon. In circa 5000 BCE, there are the first signs of agriculture, and the earliest known settlement in Japan at Sannai Maruyama is dated to circa 3500 and lasted 1500 years. During this period, the population of Japan was mostly concentrated in coastal areas, and across the islands there would have been around 100 to 150,000 people. Almost 4,000 years after the first signs of agriculture, the first evidence of rice pops up at circa 1250 BCE, but its actual cultivation most likely began around 800 BCE, and the first evidence for growing it in wet fields dates to around 200 years later. We have more than just pottery and early agricultural evidence from this period, we also have burials. During the Jōmon period, the most common way they buried their dead was in pits, which were sometimes lined with slabs and sometimes held more than one person. They also buried their dead in jars and some large pits which contained up to 100 bodies. Other than the Jōmon pottery already mentioned, other artifacts found during this period includes jade jewelry, clay masks, and clay and stone human-shaped figurines. The traditional religion of Japan was Shinto, which would later be replaced by Buddhism as the dominant religion of the region. In Shinto mythology, the gods Izanami and Izanagi dipped a jeweled spear into the primordial sea and created the Japanese islands. They created 800 kami, or spirits, which were the gods of Shinto, and chief among them was Amaterasu, the sun goddess. The first ruler of Japan was regarded as the grandson of Amaterasu, Ninigi, and he was the great-grandfather of the first emperor of Japan, Emperor Jimmu, a semi-legendary figure who firmly established a link between the divine and all future emperors of Japan. The next period in Japanese history is the Yayoi Period, and as with the Jōmon period, as new archaeological evidence surfaces, the beginning of this period gets pushed back further. The name of this period, Yayoi, comes from the Yayoi district of Tokyo, where a reddish pottery type was first found, and shows development from the earlier Jōmon pottery. From around 400 BCE, or perhaps even earlier, people from continental Asia migrated to Japan, mostly from the Korean Peninsula, and they were probably prompted to move due to the wars and expansion from ancient China. The new arrivals in Japan assimilated with the indigenous peoples of the country, and they brought with them new and improved metalworking techniques, iron and bronze, and new pottery. With the new techniques and materials, more efficient farming tools and better armor and weaponry could be produced. With new technologies, tools, and techniques, specialized trades and professions developed, and markets for trade appeared as a result of this. In the ritual space, distinctive objects like the bronze dotaku bells were produced, and distinct social classes formed, including an elite ruling class, which eventually formed small kingdoms. There are Chinese sources that tell us that during this time there was pretty frequent warfare between the rival kingdoms of Japan, and this is supported by the fortified villages that archaeologists have excavated. With all of this development and migration of people to Japan, it isn't surprising that the ancient Japanese people decided at this point to try to establish some international relations. They sent envoys to the Chinese in northern Korea, and then in 238, 243, and circa 248 CE sent emissaries to Chinese territories. During this period, the famous Queen Himiko lived and ruled. Queen Himiko ruled over 100 kingdoms, or she may have been the monarch of the most powerful kingdom. She never married, and she lived in a castle where she was served by 1,000 women. Not only was Himiko queen, but she was also a shamaness. The monarch, being both the ruler and a high priest, was very common for the period. And her position of rule just shows that ancient Japan had a pretty favourable attitude towards women before the Chinese culture became influential in around the 7th century CE. The name for the Kofun period comes not from pottery like the Jōmon or the Yayoi, but from the monumental burials that were erected during this period, between circa 250 and 538 CE. Although this period is also referred to as the Yamato period, which dates from circa 250 to 710, since Yamato was the dominant region of the time. We don't actually know the exact location, but most historians agree that it was in the Nara region. So, during this period, but especially during the 4th century, there was a huge influx of people who migrated from the Korean Peninsula, especially from the Bachi Kingdom and the Gaya Confederation. Many of those who migrated into Japan from Korea ended up holding high governmental positions, and even mixed with the imperial bloodline. There are claims that Japan was conquered and became a vassal state, and there are even sources claiming the opposite, and that Japan established a colony in South Korea, neither of which is likely. But whatever the political relationship was between the two, there was definitely a major influx in Korean manufactured goods and raw materials, architectural elements, as well as cultural ideas, which were introduced by Korean teachers, artists, and scholars, and parts of Chinese culture like Buddhism, writing, Confucian texts, irrigation, and weaving. Back to the Kofun, these large burial mounds are another link to mainland Asia, since they were commonly built on the Korean Peninsula for the elite. Across Japan though, they number over 20,000, and some of the largest are several hundred meters across and are surrounded by a moat. Many of these tombs in Japan included horse trappings, which are ornamental decoration from a horse's saddle and bridle, which had not been seen before in burials. The Kofun also often had terracotta figurines of people, animals, and even buildings called haniwa, placed both inside and on top of them, probably to act as guardians. Since the Kofun only got larger and grander, it shows that the rulers of this period were increasing in both human and material wealth. The Yamato elite were ruling with a combination of force and alliances, but the region really needed a better governmental model, and that would come from China. The Asuka period, which spanned from 538 to 710 CE, gets its name from the capital at the time, Asuka, which was in the northern Nara prefecture. Although it didn't stay at Asuka and was moved to Naniwa in 645 and then to Fujiwara-kyo in 710. In the Asuka period, the most significant ruler of Japan was Prince Shotoku, who ruled as regent until his death in 622 CE. He reformed and centralized the government based on the Chinese model, and he created his 17-article constitution, which was all about weeding out corruption and encouraging even greater ties with China. In 645, the Soga clan, who were the dominant power, were taken over by the founder of the Fujiwara clan, Fujiwara no Kamatari, who staged a coup and then remodeled the government with a bunch of lasting reforms known as the Taika reforms. Along with taxes now having to be paid in kind and not labour, the recategorization of social ranks, the nationalization of land and written law codes. It was at this time that the emperor was granted absolute authority. When Emperor Temmu, who ruled between 672 and 686, made it so that only direct descendants could claim a right to the imperial throne, numerous rival clans were formed. Temmu chose Fujiwara-kyo as the capital and built both a palace in the Chinese style and also streets, which were organized in a grid pattern. A major development during the Asuka period was the adoption of Buddhism, which was introduced to Japan during the 6th century by the Emperor Yomei, and then encouraged further by Prince Shotoku. The adoption of Buddhism by Japan's elite helped raise Japan's cultural status in the eyes of their powerful neighbours, Korea and China. The period between 552 and 645 has been given an alternative name, the Suiko period, after the Empress Suiko. During this period, the arts flourished and both literature and music were not only promoted by the court, but artists were given tax reliefs. During the Nara period between 710 and 794, the capital was at Nara and was built on a Chinese model called Chang'an, which had buildings similar to those in China and a grid layout. There was a huge palace, the bureaucracy rose to as many as 7,000 civil servants, and the whole population of Nara towards the end of this period numbered close to 200,000. The central government was able to control their provinces with a greater military presence, and with Emperor Shomu building a Buddhist temple in every province, which really raised the people's tax since it was their taxes that was paying for the construction of the temples. The religion spread far and wide. During this time, some major temples were constructed, including the Todaiji in 752, which included a great Buddha hall. This was not only the largest wooden building in the world at that time, but it contained the largest bronze Buddha statue in the world, and it still is the largest. Although Buddhism was the most prominent religion in Japan by this time, the traditional Shinto religion was still represented with the Kasuga Taisha Shrine, built in either 710 or 768, and the Fushimi Inari Taisha Shrine, built in 711 near Kyoto. The Nara period was a prosperous time for literature, with two incredibly famous and important works being produced at this time, the Kojiki and Nihon Shoki, which were works on the Shinto gods, their creation myths, and royal genealogies. Japan's first poetry anthology, called Manyoshu, was compiled in this period, and it became the first of many. Japan at this time became more ambitious and established a strong relationship with the state of Balhae to the north of Korea, exporting textiles for furs, silk, and hemcloth in return. Although the arts and international relations seemed to be flourishing, the lives of the everyday population did anything but. The tools for agriculture really hadn't developed much, and so not enough land could be prepared for crops, and the techniques for irrigating the land were insufficient, which meant there were numerous outbreaks of famine due to crop failures. Not only did the peasants of Japan have to deal with famine, but there were smallpox epidemics in 735 and 37, which reduced the country's population by between 25 and 35%. Those in the government who were faced with dealing with these natural disasters were also dealing with an issue of low funds, since so many temples and aristocrats had been given tax exemptions. Nara had to deal with corruption and internal conflicts, with the added issue of the numerous Buddhist temples throughout the city, influencing both the aristocracy and the politics of the region. Due to these issues, the Emperor Kammu, who reigned between 781 and 806, moved the capital again, but it was a move that began what is known as the Golden Period of Japanese history. The Heian Period spanned from 794 to 1185 and is named after the capital of this time, Heian-kyo, which is known today as Kyoto. Just like Nara, the public buildings followed Chinese architectural models, and the capital was laid out in a grid. The city of Kyoto ended up enduring as the capital city of Japan for 1,000 years. Kyoto was the home to the emperor, his high ministers, the state council, and 8 ministries. And this central government, with help from a sizable bureaucracy, ruled over 7 million people spread across 68 provinces. Since many of the people of Japan worked the land, not for themselves but for other people's estates, rebellions were pretty common, especially given the banditry and excessive taxation. By the 12th century, 50% of the land was held in shoen, or private estates, and many were given tax exemptions, which didn't help the state's funds. Ruling them all was the emperor, who at this time was still thought of as divine, but he was kind of sidelined by the family of powerful bureaucrats, the Fujiwara clan. The position of the emperor was further diminished when many emperors took the throne as children and were governed by a regent or sessho, who often came from the Fujiwara family. Even when the emperor came of age, he was advised by the Kanpaku, which was a position also held by a member of the Fujiwara clan. They were everywhere, pulling all of the strings. In 1087, Emperor Shirakawa tried to break this hold the Fujiwara family had over the emperor by abdicating and allowing his son to reign under his supervision. And this strategy is still in use today and is known as a cloistered government, or insei. Buddhism continued to reign as the most popular religion, but it didn't exist on its own, with the traditional Shinto religion still holding some sway over the everyday population, as well as the influence of Confucian and Taoist thought introduced to Japan by China. Japan continued to trade both cultural ideas and goods with China, but found there was no need for borders to be defended since Japan was pretty isolated. During this period, the written script of katakana was developed from Chinese characters, and the first novel, The Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu, was written. Buddhism was drawn on as inspiration by painters and sculptors, but gradually an approach to art developed which was wholly Japanese, including the Yamato-e style of painting, which could be distinguished from Chinese works. Although plenty of fine artwork and literature was being produced and culture advanced, two important political groups in Japan were emerging at the same time, the Minamoto and Taira clans. They had their own private armies of samurai and were being used by rival Fujiwara family members during an internal power struggle. The Taira clan eventually managed to sweep away the Fujiwara, but the Minamoto were victorious in the Genpei War between 1180 and 1185. After the war, the Minamoto clan leader, Yoritomo, was given the title shogun by the emperor, and his rule was the catalyst for the emergence of medieval Japan, where the government became highly militarized. What interesting facts do you know about early Japanese history? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on our new videos every Tuesday and Friday. This video was brought to you by World History Encyclopedia. For more great articles and interactive content, head to our website via the link below. If you like my sweater, you can find this design and a bunch more in our shop at worldhistory.store, or you can find a link for it down below. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you soon with another video.